Welcome to the Thrive Today podcast. I'm Natalie Born, the media host for Thrive Today and the founder of Innovation Meets Leadership. We are a platform for women who lead and believe. And today we are sitting down with one of my friends and a awesome friend of Thrive Today, Jacquel Tucker. Her and her husband, Sean, founded a nonprofit, the Jamaica Project USA in 2016. And I love this mission is to transform rural schools and communities in Jamaica and to serve lower income communities here in Georgia with hope, with love, and with help of Christ. So, since the launch, they've completed 11 projects in Jamaica. They've been awarded 123 educational sponsorships, and they've provided healthcare to over 2,500 residents and served 22 communities in Jamaica. And they've also fed the hungry here in Georgia. Gosh, so excited to sit down and talk to you today, Jacquel. It's great to have you back on the podcast again.
Thank you so much, Natalie. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your project in Jamaica. I think that's just a great place to step out and talk about because you're not only a leader in business, but you're also a leader kind of in that nonprofit sector. And there are some people who are wired and called to both areas. So I thought it would be really fun to talk today about your wiring for both. And there may be listeners out there that are saying, why do I feel this connection to both? And I think you'll help them kind of close that gap, maybe that they've been feeling. And so let's start by talking a little bit about your nonprofit, and then we'll jump in and talk about the business side of Jacal.
Yes, absolutely. I am excited to dive into this because it just seems to be what's happening right now in terms of people leaning into their true calling and understanding that God, just like He gave, some people the one talent, some five, and some 10, and it's perfectly okay.
Well, I love that. So talk about like your nonprofit side. Like where did that come from? Where did the vision, the heart for that come from? And then we'll jump over and talk about the business side.
Well, yeah, I am like the baby of eight siblings from my parents, and I was always the one following my mom around. And that lasted from the time we lived in Jamaica until migration here in America. And just seeing her even coming to America, she was always this way as well. She would just, whatever we had, little we had at home, she would just take it and give away to people in her community. Coming to America, I was always the one helping her to pack barrels to send back to Jamaica for people there. And so she was always my inspiration. And I was, she really helped me steward this giving back and just realizing to whom much is given, much is required. And so she truly, truly inspired me. Also, the two other people really inspired me are Sean's. He's inspired by his parents too, but they actually sold everything they had at one point and moved to Guatemala to live among the people. So it
Wow.
was just amazing to have, our parents to really pour this into us. That's caused us to do a lot more.
That's so beautiful. Like, I just think about the legacy of generosity and how that has followed you guys and how important that is for us to model that for our families, our, generations to come, that generosity piece is so contagious, honestly. Like when you see somebody, it's one thing to give something away. It's another thing to give your life away. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, I love this song. I give myself away so you can use me. Easier said than done because, as the Bible talks about, if you want to follow Christ, you've got to lay down your life. You've got to lay down what your hopes and dreams are and really seek Him for what He has for you. And it's hard for us to let go of our stuff because it's so good. But I can tell you as a testimony that when you do, His is so much bigger and better. And it's done in His perfect timing. So timing is always a challenge for us because we make our plans, we know what we want to do, we have our own timeline to do it and doing it in our own strength. But it's a whole different ballgame when we say that I'm going to lay down my plans for myself. What are your plans for me? And when I talk about it's so much bigger than just our family. It's so much bigger than the community He's called us to, or even a city or a state. Sometimes it's an entire country that He's called you to impact, but you will never know unless you lay down what you're thinking you're here to accomplish and pick up what he placed inside you from before you were put in your mother's womb.
Wow. That's so beautiful. So let's go deeper. Like, how did you guys have this generational kind of like, generosity in you guys? How did you get the idea in 2016 to launch a nonprofit? Like, where did that come from? Because I think a lot of people want to start, but sometimes the biggest fear is like just that initial step. Like, how do I put that first step in front of the other one? Like that first foot in front of the other one to walk. I mean, that's really where they get hung up is how do I even start something like that? So what did it look like for you for to go from an idea to saying, yes, I'm going to do this?
Yeah, when you get the vision of what God wants you to do, a lot of times it really just cripples you and you do nothing about it because where do you even start? We're trying to figure out all the different pieces and how we're even going to get to the end of what it looks like. So we don't even start the car. So sometimes what it takes, because life is a roller coaster and it's not stopping to let us off this train. But sometimes God takes us off the train and say, time out. And that's what happened to me in 2015. I was the director of sales and marketing in Buckhead. And he said to me, you know what? I'm going to put you in a timeout. So I had to do the surgery. And so I was home on my back for 6 weeks.
Oh my
And
God.
so I could not move because it was a myomectomy. I'll share that for the ladies.
Yeah.
And so I was just so like aggravated about the whole thing and worried about it. And I remember my doctor at the time saying to me, hey, stop. This is going to be a dream time for you. I want you when you lay on your back to really listen to God. And it's funny because she's Dr. Jackie, Married with Medicine. I didn't even know she was on a show till my husband walked into the hospital room and saw her in there and like, you're Dr. Jackie. And I'm like, yeah, that's my doctor. And he said, you don't know who this is. But anyway, so he basically said to me, watch, lay there and watch. And sure enough, I calmed down. And as I was on this timeout, God spoke to me and he said, you know what? What you're doing, you think it's so great. But you keep asking me, what did I bring you back for when I brought you back from the dead? And we're in this moment right now. We're going to have a conversation. Let me just show you. And so I was like a captive audience. And he said, I've called you to greater. These little things you're trying to do to help people when I've given you so much and knowing where I took you from, it is not enough. It is not enough. And so the vision was so big. And I said, which is my advice to everybody, start with what you have, start with where you are, and start with who you know. And so I said to myself, okay, once I got well enough, which I ended up going to Jamaica, I had to use a wheelchair. That's how I got down there. So don't delay, just go with God. And He's faithful to accomplish what He needs to through you. So I went to Jamaica with Sean, my husband, and my mom and dad. We went with 3 barrels. And we get to my community I grew up in. We had an event out at the church. We were worshiping, fellowshipping, and now it's time for the giveaways to help people. So 3 barrels of stuff we collected, and we're happy and looking around, but we then say to ourselves, this is not enough. It never is enough, but we've got to remember the loaves and the fishes, how God multiplies. And so we started giving away, and I'll never forget this experience, Natalie. I went into the van to get this toy that this kid asked me for, and I knew I had one left. And I turned around and there must have been 15 other kids standing there. And they were so excited, like, Miss, yeah, we want it. We'd love a toy too. And so I looked at the one toy behind me and I said to myself, this is never going to happen again. Lord, I know the earth is yours and the fullness thereof. There's no way I should stand here and be in this position. I know that you've called us to bless people. And so my cousin said to me, hey, you have no idea what you started in Jamaica. He's not called you to this community. He's called you to the 4 corners of the world, of this country. And I went back, and next thing you know, we set this up officially. So you have to do your part. We set it up, started sharing, and God started bringing the resources and the people.
Wow. That's so beautiful. And I love what you said because you basically said in 3 different ways start. And I think that that is the message to people who have had that God dream on their heart, who've had the God idea, and they're waiting for all this stuff to kind of rain down on them to do it versus, like you said, look around. What do you have? Who do you know? Start. And I think that that's the message. And now let's fast forward and talk a little bit about what you're working on now in Jamaica.
Yeah, so there's so much that's developed over time. So when you start, it's month after month, year after year. That's how everything starts to grow. And the vision gets so big because there are things that we've done that God gave us the vision from a couple years ago, even with the student sponsorship program. So growing up in Jamaica was very difficult for me to even get through high school financially. There were days where I'd be sitting on the steps September morning and we don't even have the school fee to go, all the things. And so now with the position I'm in, I think about that. And when I go back to Jamaica, I see that. So education is huge for me because when you can persevere through your circumstances and do what's in your control, which was my ability was to go to school and learn. And God used that to fast track me into a full academic scholarship to the University of Maine. So now I know what's possible, right? So whatever he's desired for you, it shall come to pass, and you have to do your part. And so when I look and I go back to Jamaica and I see these kids, these students in these rural communities, I know what I'm looking at. And so education is the most powerful weapon or tool, I would say, that you can use to change the world. And that's what Nelson Mandela said. And I believe that because it's done that for me. And so when I look at this project that God's now shored all this up into, it's about transformation, it's about sustainability. And so we were blessed with land space there from the biggest mining company, Naranda Bauxite in Jamaica. When we sat down and said, you know what, you have farmed out all of this land, stripped all the minerals out of it, bought up the farmland, and now the land is sitting there. Help us give back and build back some of these communities with a more sustainable plan, a more transformative plan. And they said, yes, we're giving you this land. They don't know this, but that's just the first. We're coming for more. But the goal is to build this rural community resource and development center. When we shared the plans with them, they basically said, you know, we don't know anywhere else that has this, such a comprehensive plan, and with Christ as the foundation. So this center, basically, we're looking to start off with something that's about 5,000 square feet. It's going to have a library, a computer lab, purposeful function space, for workshops, you know, focused on entrepreneurship, focused on learning technical skills, various disciplines, you know, home economics, food and beverage, all of these things, having people being able to come to the center, research scholarships like I experienced and achieved, and then being able to be shown how to put together a resume, how to interview for jobs, map out a career path or find out what are people good at and help them develop that into a sustainable business. So I'm just excited for where this is going. We were given land for a build out a community garden, which we've leaned in on the local farmers to help us to spearhead that, and just to also embrace some of the programs here that we've seen at Victory, at our Victory Church,
Yeah.
and then also when we had the pandemic, we were blessed with food trucks from the USDA. We were feeding to 2,000 families a month. So we're implementing something like that in Jamaica for the farmers to families through this community garden and through a partnership with the church and with the farmers. So this comprehensive plan is really about growth. It's about meeting people where they're at in their community and know that not everybody has to migrate somewhere else, including America, to thrive. God wants to meet you where you are at so you can become a powerful force in your community for his kingdom and to change lives.
I love it because each person listening has so much more impact than they know. And when you were sharing the Nelson Mandela quote, it made me think of the Benjamin Franklin quote. I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but I'm going to read it. It says, If a man empties his purse into his head, no man can take that away from him. An investment in knowledge always pays the best interest. And I want to add to that, and an investment in faith always pays deep dividends, does it not? So, like, the fact that you're not just this brilliant woman, which you are, but you're also a woman of faith, and the combination of those two things to come back to your community and do what you're doing, that's such a cool thing. And so that's amazing. That's your nonprofit side, but we got to step back and talk about the business side a little bit, because there's also a calling to that side of the world. And let's talk about how you manage that tension.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to piggyback on what you said. It is a faith journey on both sides and a trust journey. There were things that God showed me, even on the nonprofit side and the business side, and He said, this shall come to pass. On the nonprofit side, when I would share that with our board, especially in the early days, and as they were learning about me more and about my faith, and they would laugh and say, that are you crazy? That's not going to happen. Do you see what's happening right now? The practical side of the bank accounts. And I'll just say that's what God said. And so, with that in mind, it's hard to manage the tension. Guys, it's not rabies. It is not easy managing tension. We have to totally rely on God to help us do that, because our needs, our personal needs get woven in. We've got families to take care of. We've got people who are depending on us financially. And so having a business where you basically, as an entrepreneur, you've hired me, myself, and I, that's your full team to start with. And so you're spending a lot of time in your business. But what happens when God also calls you to a ministry as well? And so lay back to laying down what you desire to say, God, show me in this moment what's important. And I can tell you that anytime that I've been faced with a business opportunity, or God's called me to do something on the nonprofit side, wherever I have peace, that's where I go. My path is the path to peace. Where am I finding peace and joy in this? Because I know that He's faithful to still accomplish what He needs to see happen. So, say, for example, on the business side, I remember going to Jamaica in 2017, and I had an incredible business opportunity. And I said to myself, oh, if I take this, then I won't be able to go on this mission trip, which is already planned. It would have been so easy for me to say, go ahead, everybody, I'll just catch up. But God said no. And I can tell you that that was a learning experience for me and turning point for me to say, am I true to what He's called me to do? Or do I just want to go my own way? And so following God, when you do what He says to do in that moment, whatever else He has for you, He doesn't stop working on it. Even if you physically step away, He continues to work on that plan. And when you step back into that space, for me, when I step back into the business space, He has already multiplied even more than what I thought was possible or what I could have done myself.
Wow, I loved the way you ended that, because I think that's the piece that you can't get from any textbook. You can't get that from any, 5 strategies to run your business, because when you're walking hand in hand with God, it's not always going to make sense, and there's so much of our faith that just equals trust, period. And trusting that you don't have a scarcity mentality, that He will provide for you, that you carry an abundance mentality because of who He is. Like, you can't teach that in a textbook. You just have to live it. You have to just know.
Absolutely. And to have the right people around you. And that's the thing, who can come in agreement with you. That is so important. There's got to be at least one, because God did not, He created this vision for us personally and individually, but we're not meant to carry it alone. And so He is there to show us who that's going to be. Sometimes, that's our spouse, or it's a parent, or it's complete strangers that we don't know, but that's also part of the bigger plan, because especially when we're operating in tension, if we learn that we don't have to do it all, that we can delegate to people who are there willing and able to help us to bring the dream to pass and get the work done, then the right people are in the right place. And so that's how we can expand. That's how we can do more on both sides. And I've had to learn that, because you want to do everything yourself and you're like, oh, certainly this person doesn't have the time, but we just have to share what the needs are that God's placed in our heart. And there are people raising their hand to say, hey, you go ahead and do this. I've got this over here. So that's super important to build not just your faith and trust in God, but to build that inner circle, that core team that God's called to come alongside you to help you.
That's so good. I would imagine there are setbacks. I would imagine that not everything goes perfectly all the time. What are maybe 2 or 3 things that you do when you're facing a setback? How do you get yourself to, you know, the right mental state to actually even deal with the setback? Because everything I've heard you talk about, it's a faith journey, and I'm sure that it didn't always just go perfectly in a line exactly the way you expected every time. How do you handle that?
So I'll share something on the business side. And when you have a business and you started it and you're growing and you built a foundation, for me, it was 2020 and COVID came. And so my business before was focused on the hospitality industry. I was doing consulting, training, task force, and so forth. And so, as we know, during COVID, that entire industry just shut down. And so I felt like now all the pieces I was, building up to this mountain and all the pieces just were just scattered and everything was disrupted. And so I had to go back to God and said, I thought you called me to do this. Here is a nonprofit, which then a funny thing started happening. When something is shut down in one area, we've got to keep our eyes open because another area is going to thrive just the same way other people are thriving. So we've got to look on the full scope of our lives and say, wait a minute, God, this isn't going the way I planned, but this over here is going great. But even while the nonprofit was working out great, I said to God, like, hey, what is it that I should be doing now? And this is something that's now put me in the space that I'm in. He said, your purpose on fire. And you now realize, following my ways, what that looks like. Because when I was able to stand in a parking lot, Natalie, and a truck pulls up with food to feed 2,000 families, I'm looking at the 10 organization lines that line up with their trucks. I'm looking at the lines of cars, people were stuck in their homes. And I'm standing and an 18-wheeler pulls up in the parking lot. And I looked at it and God reminded me, you're the same girl who was standing in a shop in Jamaica growing up, asking a shopkeeper for, hey, can I get 2 pounds of flour, a pound of rice to cook dinner? Mom, dad, they don't have the money right now, but we will pay you to feed your family. And look at where I have brought you. Never miss the signs of what God's doing. Because can I tell you that driver hopped out and he said to me, one. I mean, in Jamaica, because he saw our name, what are the chances? He will remind us that, yeah, I am doing a new thing over here. So when God said to me, hey, you're now purpose on fire, you get it, right? You get it's about serving people. Then he said to me, I want you to teach that to other people, what you now know. Help them to figure out what I've called them to do. Take that thing. And I love your set it on fire. Because we said set help them to set it on fire. So you're like my set it on fire sister.
You've got the purpose on fire, I've got the set it on fire. I got
Set
let's
it on
go.
fire. I remember like Pastor Dana said, Vicky slams, fuego. Like, come on, let's go. And so from that moment, I started helping people to pull this thing together. It's like darts behind me on a dartboard when they start throwing. God's telling me to do this. Doesn't make sense for them. But can I tell you when they're done and I look at my dartboard, it's formed a really nice pattern and I say, I feel the peace in this. I think this is where God's leading you. And so we have to take that, set it up, build brand and launch it out and start doing it. Start with where you are, with what you have, and which we know. And that's become the most rewarding thing for me. I've helped over 70 people do that, whether nonprofit or business. And I'm now able and positioned in the business space to help business owners do that.
Yeah.
Pull the dream together the way God wanted it to be so that you can, as we say, thrive.
I love it. You know what? Wow. I love how you said, "Hey, zoom out whenever you have a setback. Really look at, this may be dying down over here, but it may be because God is bringing something else to life in a different location." And so we have to remain open-hearted to what God is doing and not get into a place of fear, and I love that. How can people find and follow you and get connected with what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the Jamaica Project USA, I feel like we're entering in such a new season, the next level where God wants us to be. So of course, I'm going to start with that first. Our website is at the Jamaica Project USA.org, or email is we care at the Jamaica Project USA.org. And we are just looking to for people to partner with us who want to have a serious impact for the kingdom, to help the least, and in the process to grow. You'll be so surprised by the growth that you experience when you turn around and help others, and how God multiplies other areas of your life because of that faithfulness. And so we're looking for people to volunteer with us. We're looking for people who have resources that we need, whether it's for the community center or for these mission trips that we go on annually. So when we connect, I'll be happy to share more with you. We're also growing and expanding in terms of even our leadership award, so on and so forth. So we're just looking for people with a heart to serve. So if that's placed on your heart, we're here for you and to help you live out your calling in that special way. And then also on the business side, I help individuals through my Purpose on Fire, mypurposeonfire.com, but also my LLC, where I help business to business. The J Tucker Group is helping hospitality industry business owner, equipping and empower them to thrive in excellence, with their systems and processes, elevate their customer experience, and just to make sure that their vision is represented in how they show up.
I love it. You're doing so much. You're doing so much, but you are just making a huge impact for the kingdom. Thank you so much for your time today, Jacquel.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. It's been such a pleasure. I really appreciate the opportunity. And I would say to all the ladies out there, just go with God, just move at his pace, and he will bring the vision to pass, the mission to accomplishment.
I love it. That's a beautiful way to end. And hey, ladies, let me just say thank you so much for joining the Thrive Today podcast. I hope you're inspired. And I actually hope that you will stop, take a moment, and share this episode on all your social media platforms. Again, number of ways to follow Jacquel. Please check those out in our show notes so that you can stay up to date with what she's doing. And look, if you haven't had a chance to do it, I want you to head over to thrivetoday.com because this is where you get connected in community. We have incredible leaders and thought leaders in that community, including Jacquel. And so we'd love to connect with you. Head to thrivetoday.com to learn more. And ladies, don't forget to thrive. We'll see you next time.